Good afternoon. Welcome to the dedication ceremony and ribbon cutting for the Julio S. Saldaña Jr. Gymnasium at Rising Scholars Academy of South Texas. I am Amanda Odom, Public Relations and Marketing Coordinator for South Texas ISD, and I am proud to be your Mistress of Ceremonies for this special event. Thank you to all of you for joining us this afternoon as we honor the very special Julio S. Saldaña Jr. for his contributions to South Texas ISD and to education in the Rio Grande Valley in general. Mr. Saldaña represented Willacy County through his service on the STISD Board of Directors for 30 years, playing a pivotal role in the formation and development of the college and career education programs offered to the students within the district. I personally feel blessed to have had the opportunity to attend school and work within South Texas ISD while Mr. Saldaña was a board member. It is evident in looking at the number of attendees this afternoon that many of you feel the same way about his character and his work. We are glad you are all here to celebrate the naming of this gymnasium after him. Will you please rise for the singing of the national anthem by Medical Academy student Tiffany Salazar.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose bold stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocky twig glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you, Ms. Salazar. Now, Paola Castro, Rising Scholars Academy National Junior Honor Society Vice President, and Ty Abers, Rising Scholars Academy Student Council President, will lead us in the pledges of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas flag. On my honor, allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Thank you, Ms. Salazar, Ms. Castro, and Mr. Abers. Now, please join me in welcoming Deacon Manuel Sanchez of St. Benedict Catholic Church in San Benito to deliver the invocation.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. May God, who has given us power over the works of his hands, be with you all. In his own life, Christ Jesus clearly showed us the dignity of labor. When he became incarnate, the Word of the Father was known as the carpenter's son and willing worked with the tools of his trade. By working with his own hands, he transformed toil from being and inherited the curse of sin into the source of blessings. If we do our work well, whatever it may be, and offer it to God to purify ourselves and through the labors of our hands and minds, we will build up God's creation. Our work enables us to practice charity and to help the less fortunate, so that joined to Christ the Redeemer, we grow in His love. Let us bless the Lord, then we pray He will shower us with blessings on all who work in this place. Brothers and sisters, listen to the word of the book of Genesis. God created man in His own image. In the divine image, He created him, male and female. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue us, dominion over the fish, over the sea, the birds of the air, and all living things that move on earth." God also said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant all over the earth, and every tree that has its seed-bearing fruit on it to be your food, and to all the animals of the land, all the birds of the air, and all living creatures that crawl on the ground. I give you all the green plants of food." And so it happened. God looked at everything He made, and He found it was good. Our God created the world and filled it with marvelous signs of His power. He also blessed humans' toil from the very beginning. So in His modest of invitations creation, goodness, we must willingly devote ourselves to bringing creation to His perfections. So let us pray our prayers. God, our all-providential Father, we have planted the earth and its fruits under our care, so that our labor we will endeavor to ensure that all share in the benefits of your creation. Bless all this, those who will use this building and gymnasium, either as buyers or as sellers, so that by respecting justice and charity, they will see themselves as working for the human good and find joy in contributing to the progress of the early city. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Now let us pray together the Our Father. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. May God, the Father of goodness, who commanded us to help one another as brothers and sisters, bless the new building with your presence, and look kindly on all of us. We ask you this in Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. You may be seated.
Thank you, Deacon Manuel Sanchez. Today is a special occasion for Rising Scholars Academy and South Texas Independent School District. Many of us can attest to the fact that Mr. Julio S. Saldaña Jr. is a wonderful man with a kind spirit and a genuine interest in bettering the lives of others. It is exciting to be able to gather to celebrate him and all that he has done for the district, as well as the naming of a building after him, a lasting reminder of his legacy within our South Texas ISD family. Unfortunately, Mr. Saldaña was not able to travel today to be with us to celebrate. We are grateful for his family members in attendance and for each and every attendee. Before we move forward with our program, I would like to recognize some of our very special guests in attendance this afternoon. First, I would like to recognize our elected officials in attendance. Would our elected officials representing the state, county, city, and town please stand to be recognized? Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce you to our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Marla Guerra, and the members of our South Texas ISD Board of Directors. Board members, will you please stand as I call your names? Douglas E. Buchanan, Vice President from Raymondville. Graciela Camargo from Weslaco. Homero Garcia, Weslaco. Hector Gonzalez from Lyford. And Eliseo Munoz III from Brownsville. Next, I would like to recognize Mr. Saldaña's family members who are in attendance. Would the family members of Julio Saldaña please stand to be recognized? Thank you. I would also like to recognize those who served on the Facilities Naming Committee for the Julio S. Saldaña Jr. Gymnasium. If you served on the committee, will you please stand? Thank you, and thank you for your work to make this happen. This is very exciting. Next, I would also like to recognize any past or present faculty, staff, and administration from Rising Scholars Academy or any of our other South Texas ISD campuses. Would you please stand to be recognized? And any past and present members of the Education Foundation of South Texas ISD. Would you please stand to be recognized? Thank you. Last but certainly not least, I would like to recognize the representatives from the local chambers of commerce. If you are here today representing the Harlingen Chamber of Commerce, the Raymondville Chamber of Commerce, and the San Benito Chamber of Commerce, will you please stand to be recognized? Thank you. Thank you again to all of you for attending this special ceremony today. Unfortunately, our board president was not able to make it, but I would like to now recognize our board vice president, Doug Buchanan, who will deliver the welcome and his reflections.
Thank you very much. It is certainly an honor to be before you this afternoon. First of all, I think it's important that, as Amanda said, Mr. Joey Lepez, our board president, wasn't able to be here. Those of you who know Joey will understand this. I am a little taller and a whole lot better looking. Okay? So just for the record. And you people in Lyford, you know me from a long time ago, okay? So you know that I have changed a little. Anyways, I go back to what I said before. It is an honor to be here this afternoon. It is good to see a lot of familiar faces that I haven't seen since 1981, you know, and it's almost like coming home and welcome back, almost a family reunion for me. So thank you, all of you who have come forth to be a part of this tribute, this celebration, and this ceremony. On behalf of the South Texas ISD School Board, administration, Dr. Guerra, of course, Jeff Embry, our Deputy Superintendent, and all other individuals in South Texas ISD, we consider ourselves a family. And so at this time, I want to extend myself on behalf of the board to welcome you to become a part of our family, because you've come to visit, but once you visit, you want to stay. So we ask that you enjoy your stay here this afternoon, enjoy the comments that are made. I'm sure there'll be some that will tickle you, some that will make you ponder, but all in all, they are going to be done to recognize and appreciate a young man by the name of Julio Saldaña. So again, welcome and thank you for being here. Now, I will shift gears and leave Joey and become Doug Buchanan and give you a little bit of information that I think is important before the other people follow me with their reflections. It already has been said that Mr. Saldaña served on the board for 30 years at South Texas ISD. But it also needs to be said that while he was on the board, he served in different capacities. One of those capacities was to serve on the Policy and Curriculum Committee and also as a secretary. He was very knowledgeable about policy and curriculum, and he had a master's degree and still does in education, and had vast experience in the field. And that showed every time he came to the boardroom, he brought that experience with him. Mr. Saldaña's role as a South Texas ISD board member was to be a strong advocate for the quality of education for all children. He's used his time and talents to support the democratic principles that all children deserve a quality education. And those of you who don't know, our school started as a special education school district, basically. And it was through his advocation and how we have transformed to become the school district that we are. And Mr. Saldaña had a lot to do with that. Mr. Saldaña's unyielding commitment to public education, his leadership, his vision and experience are some of the qualifications that makes him an outstanding contributor to South Texas ISD. And probably most importantly, through Julio Saldaña's communication efforts and contacts with local, state, and national government officials, many of our youth for generations have been impacted and affected positively by that. On a personal note, I'd just like to say that I did come here in 1981, and it just so happens that I taught, my first teaching position was in the Lyford School District. It was actually at Travis Elementary. And lo and behold, the paraprofessional who was my assistant was Carolina Saldaña. Now, I'm gonna get emotional. What a delight. Truly, I apologize. Truly a woman that was just a gift to children in general. And then to find, we always say, behind a good man is a better woman. Well, I'm not gonna say a better man, but equally good was her counterpart, Julio. And I was invited to dinner within the first few weeks, you know, to be welcomed. I mean, they were just such wonderful people to welcome me to the Valley and things like that. And I went to the house, and she opened the door, had to meet the kids, et cetera. Some were a little bigger than they were then, but I was a little smaller then too. And I remember Julio saying, "So you're the Yankee from New York?" Guilty. He said, "You know what Fideo is?" "No, sir, I don't." "Well, you better like it, because my wife made it." Well, I'm a little intimidated. Come to find out, that was the most intimidating thing he said to me the rest of my life. He's always been gracious, kind, very influential in many ways, or influencing, I guess would be a better way to put it. He's the reason why, or one of the reasons that I'm on the South Texas ISD School Board. He was an advocate of many things, but he was mostly an advocate about getting what the children needed. How do we get what they can most need, appreciate, and is going to take them to the next level, is going to motivate them, is going to drive them. And he said, you can be any capacity, from his wife, a paraprofessional, up to a superintendent. But a board member is where it starts. And from there, it's a trickle-down theory. And if you're worth your salt, that's where you can make the greatest impact. I thank Julio for that. It's been a wonderful run. I love South Texas ISD. I also love Julio Saldaña. And I congratulate him on behalf of our school district and all that are partnered here on this dedication of this facility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan. Today, we will also hear from several of Mr. Saldaña's family members, including a couple who call STISD their alma mater. They will share with us reflections into Mr. Saldaña's character and impact within the field of education and his community. First, please join me in welcoming Mr. Cristobal T. Saldaña, nephew of Mr. Julio Saldaña.
Good afternoon. My name is Cristobal Tomás Saldaña, and I'd like to take a moment to say some words about my Uncle Julio. When I left to university and attended freshman orientation, Dr. Patty O'Hara talked about 3 characteristics with which she wanted students to graduate. TLC. I'm not talking about tender loving care. T, she explained, stood for talent. She stated she knew we all had talent because if we did not, we would not be in the audience. L stood for leadership. She hoped our experiences at the university would shape us for the leadership roles we would soon hold in the future. And C, she said, was for character. Talent and leadership, she remarked, without character was and remains a dangerous combination. It's funny because since my time at university, it seems those 3 characteristics have made a huge impression on me, even more so now as an educator. Over the years, I remained steadfast to the pillars of talent, leadership, and character. However, since first hearing them, I have tweaked the pillars just a bit. I have added 2 more C's. The first C I added was compassion. Compassion is an underrated quality in this world. Being able to understand the perspective and place from which another human being is coming is so important in our increasingly globalized world. A world where numbers and data sometimes seem to matter more than the faces of the people with whom we interact each day. The second C is the reason we are gathered here today, community. The importance of not simply belonging to the community, but also being an active member of that community to the point where you dedicate yourself to the service of that community cannot be overstated. My uncle is the perfect example of the TL3C philosophy that has come to define my life. After serving his country in the military, he worked in Lyford CISD for 30 years. He began as a bus driver, and through his hard work and dedication, eventually became principal at both Lyford High School and Lyford Junior High. It is evident Lyford came to realize his talent and leadership. In addition, his character shone through during those 30 years. While working for Lyford CISD, he also served as a trustee for South Texas ISD for over 30 years, showing his commitment and service to his community. And finally, after he retired from Lyford, he served as an administrator for the prison in Reynaville, never wavering in his endeavors to serve his fellow man. If that is not the true testament of compassion, then I don't know what is. For as long as I can remember, the importance of education has been impressed upon me. And not just obtaining the education, but earning it with excellence. This was impressed upon me by my parents and my grandmother. I cannot help but recognize that the focus on education in my immediate family was due in no small part to my Uncle Julio. For several years, his earning of a master's degree has been the gold standard for the family in pursuit of educational excellence. It is partly because of him that I have had the drive to accomplish what I have in my educational pursuits. And like the great educator and uncle he is, he, along with my late Aunt Caro, has been one of my biggest cheerleaders along the way. Now we gather to honor him. His legacy is not only his family, but those lives he touched as an educator, administrator, and trustee here in South Texas. He will always be our family's golden standard, not only for educational excellence, but also living a life of excellence and service. And he will always be one of my heroes. Thank you for being such a great example to me. Thank you for being such a great example to our family. And thank you for being such a great example to our community.
Thank you, Mr. Saldaña. Next, please help me welcome Ms. Aurora C. Sosa, niece of Mr. Saldaña and a Med High alumna.
Good afternoon. About 6 weeks ago, I was asked to speak at a dedication ceremony for Mr. Saldaña, as everyone knows him by. I simply know him by Uncle Julio. After a minute of processing in my brain that I was going to speak, I asked my cousin Midala, what should I say? She simply replied, speak from your heart. So here goes my heart. I have had many influential people who have guided me in life, starting with my parents. But I have also had extended family members and friends as well. Uncle Julio is one who has influenced not only me, but all those that he educated. As Chris said, he has impressed a higher level of education and made it clear that giving up was never an option in our family or in our community. Growing up in a small rural town in Cameron County, the highest level of education we had in our community was up to the 8th grade. So a decision had to be made to see where I was going to go to high school. I had to decide what path I would take in life, but as far as I can remember, I knew that I loved healthcare, and I knew that my goal was to be a nurse. That is when Uncle Julio spoke to my mother about Med High. He spoke proudly of South Texas ISD Charter School and told her how this school district was the best the Valley could offer to all their students. He was so excited about being part of this school district and representing Willacy County as a board member. My mother, of course, was reluctant, but I remember being so excited about the conversation. He told us about how I would meet students from all over the Valley and that Med High would give me a solid foundation to further my education. So, as the spring semester passed, I remember applying to Med High. I remember being so nervous and saying, oh my God, I will not get accepted. But luckily, I was accepted. As an adult, I now realize why Uncle Julio takes so much pride in this school district, because South Texas ISD is simply the best, and it prepares you for a career in whichever field you choose, whether it be business, science, engineering, or healthcare. Attending this school is a decision I will not regret, and one of the best choices that I have ever made. It is an honor that at the end of those 4 years of high school, your uncle gives you your high school diploma. It's a memory that I will never forget. As William A. Ward said, the mediocre teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, and the great teacher inspires. This is exactly what Uncle Julio has done. He has inspired many throughout his career, not only within his immediate family, but those who are part of his extended family as well. This is clearly seen as we are all here reunited, here to dedicate this gymnasium under his name, and it is with great pride and joy that I'm sure we accept, and he does too. Thank you for those nights spent away from your family, at board meetings, making decisions for all those students valley-wide. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with others, and thank you simply for just being Uncle Julio. It is truly an honor for me as part of the Med High alumni to be here, and most of all for being part of this dedication ceremony for a good, honest, smart, and humble man, which is my Uncle Julio. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sosa. Next, we will hear from Mr. Julio Taylor, grandson of Mr. Julio Saldaña and a Science Academy alumnus.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming today, and thank you for honoring my grandfather. And, you know, I'm staring out here. It's literally a family reunion for me today. I came down from New York, and I probably hugged 30 people before this whole thing started. So it's a real joy, and my heart swells right now, both having this ceremony and seeing family members again and everyone coming together to honor him. I might be a little bit longer-winded, and I promise you that if there are things that seem seemingly unrelated, that there is a purpose to it. But I'd like to start by telling you, not necessarily listing his accolades, all of his contributions to the community, but I'd like to just speak a little bit more to a personal side of how I knew my grandfather and how he's affected me and how I've seen him affect similar students and peers and instructors, board members, everyone that he encountered, really. I want to tell you that my grandfather has the biggest hands of any person I've ever met. Now, I'm not kidding at all, right? So what I mean by that is he wore his college ring every day of his life. And sometimes after dinner, he would take that college ring off and he would show it to me. And then he would take a quarter out of his pocket and he would show me how he could slide a quarter through that ring. Okay, so that's how big his hands are. So I used to think that was the quarter through the ring thing was the most remarkable thing. But as I've gotten older, it's not so much the quarter through the ring, you know, it's not the quarter through the ring, it's actually the ring itself and what it stands for. See, I thought I had lost my class ring. I graduated from high school at the Science Academy, and I came down to New York, or from New York. My mother said, hey, I have your class ring, and so I said, I want to wear that for this thing, right? So, but honestly, I don't know when the last time was, and I thought of this ring before I started writing this speech. So, the differences between my class ring and his are not just that his was a master's degree, and it's not that mine was from SciTech or whatever. You know, my grandfather's ring symbolized not just his education. My grandfather identified with that ring. And when I say he identified with the ring, I don't mean that he identified with having more education than the next guy. Of course, the ring means that he set out to accomplish something huge. And he accomplished that. And it wasn't so much that it symbolized that he actually accomplished something. It was meant to say, I accomplished this, and if I did this, imagine what you can do. So the ring, the completion of the education, the things he sacrificed to get to that point, the efforts required of him every step along the way, that was his impossible dream. If you guys ever got sent to his office for bad behavior, that poster was there with a paddle or something, right? And I never made the connection between what that impossible dream poem meant and why there was Don Quixote on that poster. But my grandfather's favorite book is Don Quixote, and in 1972 there was a movie made called Man of La Mancha, in which a song was written by a man named Joe Darien, who was featured, called The Impossible Dream. That song was later awarded the Contemporary Classics Award from the Songwriters Hall of Fame. And I think my grandfather knew that impossible dreams are contagious. Now, I'm not going to ask who's read Don Quixote, because I'm pretty sure like none of us have ever made it through that novel. You know, it's 1,000 pages, it's about 50 extensive chapters. And if you're not looking for sort of the deeper meanings in it, it can just seem like some sort of whimsical, fanatical story about, you know, a guy who's kind of delusional and his odd sidekick and his worn down horse, and, you know, but just as a quick synopsis, right? Basically, there's an old man who has a mental breakdown from reading too many fantasy novels about heroes and adventures, and he decides that, you know, he wants to be a knight. In order to be a knight, he has to have a cool name, and knights have to have a fair maiden to fight for. So he starts calling himself Don Quixote de la Mancha. He makes up a woman in his head, and he calls her Dulcinea. And he loves Dulcinea, and he considers her the most beautiful woman in the world. And most deserving of proclaiming his victories in her honor. His horse is a worn-out old horse called Rocinante, and along the way he meets a short and heavy-set man who rides a donkey named Sancho Panza. Right? So I'm going somewhere with this, I promise, right? So, all right, so Sancho Panza, he promises Sancho an island for following him on these adventures. And along the way, he's doing these insane things, like he's fighting windmills. And, of course, so he says, the windmills are giants, and he starts to, that's where the saying, tilting on windmills comes from. So he goes to fight this windmill, and of course, he can't just defeat a windmill. So when Sancho Panza realizes that, he falls off his horse, he can't defeat the windmill, Don Quixote says, there must be a wizard at work here that changed these giants into windmills. So my mom's an English teacher, by the way, and she and my grandfather taught me to interpret literature with deeper, more profound meanings. And so I think I finally understand why this book and the Impossible Dream Song were so important to him. Don Quixote, no matter the seemingly impossible, he finds armor. This armor is old, not taken care of, it's green, it's tarnished, no matter. He puts the armor on and he wears it, no matter the modest beginnings and unsuitable tools. He also finds a lance, but the lance is old and it's broken and it immediately falls apart, so he uses twine or whatever was available in the 16th century to fix that, right? By whatever means necessary. Even if his old and feeble horse resembling the owner, Don Quixote, the name Rocinante, my grandfather is a fan of etymology as well, and where words derive from. And Rocinante kind of means, roughly translated out, to worker and before, like the horse used to be a worker. So Don Quixote had all really terrible tools to start out with, right? And the name Quixote, I'm pretty sure that has something to do with the word quixotic, right? It's kind of similar. I drew that conclusion anyway. But the definition of the word quixotic means exceedingly idealistic, unrealistic, and impractical. But how many of us have been told that our dreams are impossible? And how many of us have been told that one person can't make a difference in the world? And how many of us have met with great resistance when we're attempting to take on something larger than ourselves? And the better question, which my grandfather asked me at one point, was, what would you set out to accomplish if you knew that you could not fail? He didn't start out as a board member, and he didn't start out as a teacher. He started out as no education and became a custodian and bus driver, and modest beginnings with great odds stacked against him. He probably could have made more money at that point by just working more overtime at the cotton gin. But my grandfather was not passionate about cotton. The more I think about his career path, the more I realize that he didn't drive buses for the money. He didn't wear that ring because he earned a degree. He believed in the cause, he believed in the process, he believed in the system, and he identified with it. And when you're passionate about something, you want to see how it works from the inside out. And you want to learn every nuance of your passion. And part of your identity is shaped by it. He wasn't a teacher, he was an educator, he wasn't an instructor, he was a mentor. He wasn't a guy who would ever just give a man a fish. What I mean by that is like within Williston County and Lyford, and my grandfather made a whole lot of men and women into fishermen. He metaphorically taught them how to fish for themselves, which is what I think a great instructor does, what a great educator does. And one thing he didn't like are excuses. He never liked excuses, all right? So if I ever said something like, this is too hard, he'd say, well, if you wanted to, then you would. And I say, I don't think I can do this. And he'd say, well, I guess it's just not that important to you. He used to make me angry when he said these things. It was frustrating. And I thought he was just set in his ways because, let's face it, to take things on that are larger than yourself, seemingly impossible and largely impractical, you have to be hard-headed if you're going to make progress. I'd say, I'm not going to do this because it's too difficult. And he says, well, I guess you don't want it that bad. I'm a bit older now, and I find myself repeating these lines to myself and to other people. And, it's most people don't want to turn into their grandparents or their parents, but I've always been a little excited about maybe gradually turning into my grandfather. The But you know, people really don't like it when you call them out for not reaching their full potential. But what you don't realize at the time is what he was actually doing is just, he was actively believing in you. You know, it might be a bit of tough love, but at the time I didn't realize that every response he gave me was just an empowered rejection of I can't. If I said I'd give up, he'd say, oh, you don't want it that bad. But he would never agree with me that I couldn't do something. He'd chalk it up to believing if I really wanted to do it, then I would, but it's not that important to me, so the thing is left undone. Not because I can't, though, because he always knew I could. And the problem was that I didn't know what I was capable of yet. And you know, he knew that I always could. Just look at his ring, look at what he accomplished. And he knew if he accomplished that, his impossible dream was made possible. I mean, you know, the point of impossible dreams is not to have them stay within the realm of impossibility as much as it is to bring them into reality. And once you do that, you're addicted to it. And I think he had his impossible dream, and he pursued that to the end. And the poster, you know, the Don Quixote, the ring, what it stood for, and the way that he actively believed in every one of his students and his family, his children, his board members, his peers. I still have not met another person who does it quite like him. You know, raising 3 daughters in a home while you work more than one full-time job and attend college it's an impossible dream and a half, you know. Of course, there are other elements that make that sort of thing more difficult, but to my knowledge, I don't think he ever took a full course load, not with 3 kids, 2 jobs, and an hour of transit to university, right? So he had to take 1 or 2 classes over time, over the course of years, and he served his country and used the GI Bill to get through college, and sure, that helped him, but the more I think of my grandfather and what makes him great and what makes him deserve this building dedicated to his name, the more I think of Alonso Quixano before he decided to call himself Don Quixote. My grandfather scraped together whatever tools he had at his disposal to make his impossible dream come true. His dream of being an educator. But his dream was your dream because his dream simply was to enable others to pursue their impossible dream. All he ever communicated was possibility. All he ever communicated was encouragement. And what kind of a man has the courage to dream and accomplish his dreams? He was a founding member of STID in the year I graduated in 2002. Newsweek ranked the Science Academy the 9th best high school in the nation. Not the state, the entire country. And it's a public school, mind you. Keep in mind, most of these schools on this Newsweek list were all private schools, and the schools in education at STISD are open to anyone in the Rio Grande Valley when they hit 9th grade. So, you know, talk about being quixotic and largely impractical. It's like, let's take the best teachers, we'll put them in the best curriculum, and we'll get $1 million busing system to bring these students out here. What kind of a huge dream is that? And that was part of his vision as well. So, you know, going back to Don Quixote, right? So he goes on so many adventures that are ridiculous and impractical, and eventually word gets out that there's this crazy old man on a horse dressed up like a knight out there doing crazy things, and he becomes something that people mock at some point. And you know, so the dukes and the earls and the rich and the elite of the area begin to draw up situations and invite Don Quixote in for their amusement. So, for example, they would tell Don Quixote there's a knight that you need to go fight. And so they would witness this, and it became like dinner theater mocking the guy. And one of the saddest parts of the book, someone tells Don Quixote that there's a woman who has died for his love. And for whatever reasons, Don Quixote just could not get there in time, and now she's dead. And Sancho Panza and Don Quixote go to her funeral, and it's a very sad time because there's a funeral and everyone's dressed in black. And they remove their hats out of respect, and what happens out of this is the woman in the casket actually sits up and starts laughing at him and says, do you think I would really die for you? You're a stick in the mud, you're no one, and all the elite and everybody are laughing at him. And basically, the symbolism within that book at that point is that the world that Don Quixote has created, the reality that he lives in, it's being taken away. The dukes and the duchesses, in a more subtler literary interpretation, are saying that they're the ones that control reality. They control what is real. So if they say you have to live in this world and do what we do, or do what we tell you to do, then you have to do it. But the greater interpretation out of this scene are two emerging questions. And one is, how far would you go to follow your dreams? And who stands in the way of your dreams? After Don Quixote leaves this funeral, as if this humiliation isn't enough, they send a knight after Don Quixote to make him renounce Dulcinea as the most beautiful woman in the world. So then this knight finds him, he fights him, and of course Don Quixote cannot compete, and he starts losing this fight. And during the course of this fight, the other knight holds a sword at Don Quixote's throat. And he says, you know, renounce her as the most beautiful woman in the world. And Don Quixote refuses. And he says, you can kill me before I give up my beliefs. And the literary meaning behind that is that you should never, ever give up on your dreams, even if people wish to take those dreams away from you. And through that, he disrupts the trends of those people who would stand in the way of his dreams, determine what is right, what is wrong, and what he should and shouldn't do. See, my grandfather holds his belief in education, and within his beliefs, he found his impossible dream, and he pursued that as far as he could. And along the way, he affected so many people's lives for the better. His dream is your dream, and in pursuing his own dream, he sought to show you how you can pursue your own dreams too. No matter what the odds, lack of tools, resistance faced, despite people mocking you, despite people discouraging you. I'm reminded of that Gandhi quote that says, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And we should all strive for something bigger than ourselves. And what is your dream? Did you pursue it? And if not, why? And how can you pursue that dream in your own way each and every day? Because if your dream is impossible enough, you will be met with some obstacles, but I'm hesitant to refer to those things as obstacles, because they're more like milestones, marking your pathway through the journey in pursuit of your impossible dream. And if you're doing your impossible dream right, you will be met with these elements. And one of the last things I'd like to mention is my grandfather's loyalty. He married one woman, he had 3 daughters, he lived in Lyford, and that's the school district where he worked for 30 years. Later, my mother would teach 7th grade English there, and she was actually my 7th grade English teacher. My aunt would teach in the Rainbow School District. My grandfather had pride in his town and his county where he grew up, and he gave back to him his entire life. He never moved to a big city, even though he saw the entire world in the military. Who sees the entire world and comes back to give back to their hometown? He was loyal to Lyford, Willisey County, South Texas ISD, and he was loyal to his impossible dream. In fact, I remember attending a football game, because if you've ever gone to school in Texas, you know about 2 things. You know about high school football and the toss test, right? So my grandfather basically set a goal for the toss test scorers to be met by his students. He needed to raise their average, right? So he said, hey, if you guys make this metric in the toss test, I will kiss a pig. And I'll be damned if he didn't kiss a pig during halftime. When that metric was, I watched him kiss a pig, literally, during halftime, okay? So, going back to the whole Don Quixote being mocked thing, my grandfather was not afraid to be mocked. He was not afraid of that. That comes with the territory when your business is pursuing impossible dreams. It's just part of the process, and he wasn't afraid of failure. It was very clear that, he always made it very clear that failure was not something to be ashamed of. You know, now that this gymnasium is here and it's got his name on it, and while there may be a list of accolades somewhere, I mean, I know I didn't list a whole lot of them, you know, other than master's degree, you know, school board, what have you. I don't consider my grandfather one of my heroes because he's got a master's degree. I consider him one of my heroes because he was the man that showed me that my dreams are not impossible at all. And you know, maybe that's what stops us from pursuing our own dreams. Maybe it's our own self-imposed limitations that we don't realize that we place on ourselves. Our own determinations of what is possible and what is impossible. And maybe we're told what is impossible, and what has limited possibility, and what we should do, and maybe that's by some external force to which, he also showed me how to rebel against. He showed me how to shift the power in seemingly impossible situations. And that gift is not unique to me. He tried to give that to everybody. And I hope that someday, when kids that have never met my grandfather look at his name on the side of this building, and I hope that serves as concrete, literal concrete evidence that their dreams are not impossible either. So, I'd like to close this up by just reading you the impossible dream. And I hope it sticks with you. Because I think that as important as the story of Don Quixote and the symbolism there and the poem of the impossible dream, I hope that as important as that was to my grandfather and still is, I don't know that he ever really articulated why. And this is just my interpretation of why these things are so profound to him. So, the impossible dream. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are too weary to reach an unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I am laid to rest. And the world will be better for this. That one man, scorned and covered with scars, still strove with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable star. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you again to all of our speakers this afternoon for opening their hearts and for sharing their stories and their reflections with us all. This will conclude the program portion of this afternoon. Next, we will have a ribbon cutting for the newly dedicated gymnasium and a celebratory dinner.
Joseph.
Well, I'm glad to be and honored really to be here this afternoon. This is a dedication of the gymnasium here at our campus, one of our South Texas ISD campuses, and I'm very proud of the individual that's going to be recognized, and it is justly so. He has served on the board for over, well, I think 30 years to be exact, but his contribution to education goes way beyond that, and his contribution to South Texas ISD filters down from the board level all the way down to each one of our students that have either been here or will continue to come here, because he has just provided us with really a legacy of what's going on here, and we are just so thankful to recognize him today. And Julio Saldaña, way to go! You're a great man, and we thank you for all that you've done for us.
Well, I just want to say that I wish Julio were here. I know he would enjoy it because I did, and the rest of the family certainly did too.
Okay, well, Julio, I'm sorry that you're not here. We're having such a wonderful time in your honor. The ceremony was beautiful and the food delicious. And we missed you. I was hoping to be able to say this without all these tears. But I always hold in my memory of when Dad had the little store, and some of the people that only worked during the harvest time and didn't have the money for groceries. Dad would let them have it on credit, and that they would send the kids sometimes after, whatever was needed at home, milk or whatever, and on credit. And they would put it down on this bill, and he'd have the little kid to sign, and the child would say, well, I don't know how to write my name. Well, come here, he said, we're going to teach you how to write your name, even if it's just, your first name. And see, he would take the time, you would take the time, Julio, to teach them. And you said that right then and there is when you decided that's what you wanted to do in life. Be a teacher and teach children how to read and write. And you fulfilled that promise. And I love you for that. And I'm very proud of how far you came. And I love you very much. God bless you.
I would really like to thank all the members of South Texas ISD who put all of this together for my grandfather, because even though he's not here, to see my family come together and to see so many different people whose lives that he affected is such an honor. And it was very emotional hearing everyone talk about their stories and how, he inspires so many people, and he rose through the most ridiculous odds to get where he did in the board and in his life. So to have that recognized, not just by us, his family, but also by all these people whose lives he touched, it is just a beautiful sight to see, and I really appreciate it. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Hi, Mr. Saldaña. Just want you to know that you're with us today in spirit, and we've been thinking about you all evening and sharing this wonderful celebration with your family, both your own family and your STISD family. We love you, Mr. Saldaña. We miss you so much. We wish you would have been here today. But your family, your grandson, your nephew, all of them spoke so highly, and they spoke from the heart. And they said, and they shared how you've touched their lives. And that's so meaningful. I learned more about you today than in all the years you served on the board and were my boss. But more than anything, Mr. Saldaña, you've been a mentor to me and a friend, and someone that I've always been able to trust, and you're so well respected. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your time with South Texas ISD and with me personally. Take care. Love you. Bye.